No Accident podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Perez, and we are here today with a trilingual virtual assistant, teacher, and translator who help solopreneurs, business women in the education field, Louise Sverud. Because your time matters. Yes, I got it.
Yeah, you got it.
Please go ahead and read your bio to the audience so they know more about you. Louise Sverud is a resilient entrepreneur navigating through adversity to carve her path. Disputed the COVID-19 pandemic with 2 lost jobs in a year, she found opportunity amidst chaos. Leveraging her expertise in translation and administration, Louise founded LSVA. Her vision, a world where entrepreneurs thrive, unburdened by admin tasks. With LSVA, she empowers fellow entrepreneurs to reclaim time, reduce overwhelm, and realize their business dreams. Louise's journey epitomizes resilience and reinvention, culminating in a business that combines her love for language with organizational competency. Through LSVA, she's not just managing tasks, she's transforming lives and businesses. Welcome to the podcast, Louise. It is a great honor to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Maritza. That was a very, very kind and nice presentation of me, little business.
I love it. I love it. I have loved our conversations, and we have so many things that we're trying to compile in one episode.
Yeah, exactly.
But before we start, let me ask you our signature question. Louise, what is your accent and why is not an accident?
Right. We should almost make this a quiz to the audience, because what is my accent? I want to say, because usually I get a few different options. People say, oh, are you from Australia? Are you from New Zealand? Are you from South Africa? Are you from Wales? Some people say. And no, I'm neither of those. I suppose my accent is Swedish, because I am Swedish by origin. But I also speak very British English, and that's because I've worked for British companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your life has gone around different places in Europe, in different countries, and you have gone through different cultures. Not only that, but also to different languages. Let's tell me a little bit more of that story behind you.
Yeah. So I'm trilingual, which means that I have an additional language, which is Spanish, because I live in Spain, and I've lived in Spain for 20 odd years. But I was married to an Englishman, and I worked for English companies. So culture-wise, I've been in my little Swedish bubble. That's me. I'm Sweden. And then everywhere around me has been something else. So family-wise, it was very English, very British, with in-laws and family friends. And I worked for English companies. And then as the children grew up, we integrated more and more in the Spanish community, because they went to Spanish school, public school. I had to go to parent meetings, and we have to go to doctors and do all of those things. So I definitely live in all those 3 cultures at the same time.
Oh, that is amazing. And I love the fact that I remember when you told me that because in Sweden they speak French, don't they?
No, they speak Swedish.
Swedish. I'm sorry. Yes, Swedish. And then, which is not similar to Spanish.
No, not at all. It's not similar to anything. It's similar to Scandinavian. All the Scandinavian countries have a similar language.
Yes, it's not exactly. There is not any similar to. So how did you? How was just that exchange? Because also in Sweden, people are a little different than British. How was that assimilation of culture for you?
Yeah. Language-wise, if I can may just say first, is that most Swedish people grow up learning English very early because, well, we adore England. We're very sort of like Agatha Christie fans.
Yes.
So you learn English at an early age. So the language-wise wasn't so difficult. I think I would say I was pretty good at English even when I met the father of the children and got involved in the family. That wasn't a problem. Even so, you think maybe that there is not such a big difference between British culture and Swedish culture because, again, it's North Europe, if you put it. But I think there is more difference than you think. The British people are very, very polite, very, very important with the please and the thank yous. Whereas Swedish people are very direct, and they're the kind of people who, when they come to your house, they will open their fridge and say, "Oh, can I have some of that?" You know, they're very sort of direct. So there was a few incidents, many actually, I remember with my ex-mother-in-law, where she just couldn't understand how I could be so rude, so to speak, in her book.
A little forward for a British. Okay.
Yes, exactly. But I've worked with British people. I've worked in big corporate with a lot of British people. And I'm amazed as well as they can sit and speak on the phone to somebody and they're like, "Oh, yes, yes, absolutely, madam. Do, do, do." They're so polite. They're so friendly. They hang up and they go, and they say something really rude, which I'm not going to say out loud. And I'm like, I can't believe how you can be so polite when you are so annoyed and angry inside. A Swedish person would still do their job and be pleasant to the customer, but not overdo it in niceness if you're not actually liking the person, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay, okay. So you are more like upfront, honest.
Yeah. And now in my business, I know that is something that my clients really appreciate because I don't say yes if I want to say no or vice versa, you know. So I am always upfront and honest, and I think they appreciate that. However, when I worked for British companies, I have been told by several managers that I need to work on my email skills because I don't flower it out enough, you know. I don't start off by asking how are you and hope you're well and all of that. I just get to the point. Can you send me that report, please?
Yes. And I love this. So then did you move to England? Did I get that right?
I did briefly live in England, not for very long though, for like a couple of months, 6 months maybe.
Okay. And then what other countries have you lived on?
So I lived in Spain once before when I was very young with my mother, because my mother was also a woman who wanted to go out and see the world and work in different places. And because of her profession, she was a teacher. Sweden is quite well represented when it comes to schools. So there is, in many countries, there is a Swedish school official. So because she was a teacher, she could apply to schools all over the place. So she did that quite often. She didn't get the jobs, but she did get one in Gran Canaria, which is the Canary Islands, which belongs to Spain. So when I was 9, we moved there, and she had a contract for 3 years, which I made her break after 2 because I didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
But I was 9, 9, 10. It's a little bit of a difficult age, I think, to uproot a child and try and put a completely different culture that they don't know anything about. But as I said, then when I met my partner, he already lived here in Spain, in the Canaries as well, another island, Lanzarote. And I moved here. And I love it here, and I love the people. And I say to myself, or people say to me as well, I am conajera now, which is what we call ourselves here in the Lanzarote. It means the rabbit hunters, because that's what they used to hunt a lot here.
Oh.
Yeah. But the sad thing is, in a way, and I don't know if you have experienced this yourself with living in different cultures, is that although you feel at home in all of them, you don't feel 100% at home in any of them. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
it's a bit of both, isn't it?
Yes, I think that you have that that memory of where you grew up, where you truly belong, is that belonging of who you truly are inside and depth. And then like your culture sticks with you, and then also like your language and the way you go about life, even the food is different. So there are different things, like for instance, me, it's kind of like a big culture shock, if you will call it. But although in Colombia too, you kind of like learn English from an early age, you go into school and everything, you start learning English. But we have very specific cultural roots, with the family, the music, the food, and those things move to another country, whether it's US or Europe or you miss those.
But that is particularly, I guess, for us who have moved somewhere when we were adults, because we have already had that culture established in ourselves in our childhood. And then I suppose it's our responsibility as parents to our children, if they are now born in the new country, to give them that culture as well, which can be quite difficult because obviously it's not dominant unless there is a big community, which there is not a big Swedish community here, for example. So that can be slightly tricky as well.
Yes, and I like that. I like this conversation, having these conversations with people that are different from, in other countries and from other countries, because we all go through the same thing, because we are all humans, and no matter where we are, our roots kind of like take us, is part of who we are, is part of ourselves, is part of who you are in this life for so many people in this moment. So you moved around, learned 3 different languages, but also raised a family during this process. And you are also a teacher, and then have a very specific or a very clear understanding of how learning and moving from culture to culture and learning other languages affects positively children. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
It fascinates me because I'm interested in languages myself. I studied languages. I studied how you acquire languages and things like that. So I find it fascinating. And the thing with multilingualism, it comes in different shapes and it affects you differently. It's not just that you speak so many different languages. It's not just that, because I think certain things I always think in English, certain other things I always do in Swedish, and certain other things I prefer to do in Spanish. It's connected to different fields of my life, so to speak. But what I did an interesting experiment with not an experiment, that sounds awful, but observation, let's call it that instead, with my children when they were little, and obviously we had the 3 languages. So English was our family language because their father was English, parents were English, who lived here. Obviously my parents were still in Sweden. And Swedish, I tried the best I could. We're watching Swedish TV, we're reading Swedish books. We went every summer to Sweden to be with my parents and cousins, also, etc. And then obviously they went to nursery, Spanish nursery, and they had a Spanish daycare, and then they started Spanish school. So there was 3 languages the whole time. And at one point, I think maybe they were Oh, I must say as well, I started a Swedish school because from Sweden we get a grant if we try and keep up the Swedish language for children. So you can form an organization. It's very official. You have to do the paperwork. You have to form an organization with a board and all of this. But I did that because I thought it was important for my children. So we were a group of parents who had children, so we did that for them together. And it was around that time. So they were in the Swedish school once a week. And maybe they were 6 and 10. I said to them, when you think about yourself, your own identity, what do you see yourself as? Are you Swedish? Are you English? Are you Spanish? What are you? And they both said, we're English. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting because you are definitely not English. You haven't got an English passport. The only connection with being English was the fact that we spoke English at home. Okay. In the family, I think. But they felt that was what they were. They felt English, not having hardly ever been to England. So they didn't really have any idea of what being English was. Yes. And then I was invited to write an article recently about this topic in a Swedish magazine. And I thought, I'm going to ask my children, they're much older now. They are 23 and 19. And I went into them and I said, listen, I'm writing this article. I just want to ask you again. Do you remember I used to ask you what you felt like? And they're like, yeah, vaguely. And I said, so if I were to ask you now, how do you feel? Do you feel English, Swedish or Spanish? And without hesitation, they both said at the same time, Spanish. I'm like, oh, so you're not English anymore. You're Spanish now, which you're not either because they don't have Spanish passports. They actually are Swedish because they have Swedish passports, but at no time in their life have they ever felt Swedish, apparently. But now they feel Spanish. And again, put it down to the fact that it's the language. Now their whole life evolves around Spanish. They have been all through school. All their friends are Spanish. They are now working both in Spanish environments. I mean, it's the language that comes the easiest to them.
Okay, so basically, the culture that you will assimilate when you're little or when you are growing up in a different culture is basically the one where you are speaking the language the most.
Yeah, I would say family. Family language is the most important thing when they are younger, which takes. But then later, when they kind of break away from the family a little bit, then the outer language, the society language becomes more important, I think.
And this is we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, and this makes now so much sense to me because my daughter was born here, but we always spoke at home. And we kind of had friends that were American also. So whenever we went out of the house, we will speak English. So she was fully bilingual, but the main or mother language that we spoke at home was Spanish all the time. We even had a nanny that spoke Spanish as well because I didn't want her to lose that language. So today she says, I am Colombian. I'm Colombian. I was born here, but I'm Colombian. And people say, well, then you're American. And she's like, yeah, I am Colombo-American. But, and then to her is like, but I'm not really, I don't feel myself like I am American. When she was younger. Now that she is a teenager and, like almost about to, like going to her senior year, she's like, I think I'm very American because of the way I am, the things that I do. And then she starts seeing differences, like the certain things that I do in certain way. And she's like, no, I do it differently. Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like and share to others. And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't use any of the Spanish kind of colloquial slang words. I know them. I could easily use them, but I just don't feel comfortable with it because it kind of feels like it's something that you should have grown up with, being used to saying it. For me to say it, it just, I cringe myself. I go like, why did I say that?
Yes, and it may also because it doesn't go with the way you grew up.
No,
Probably. There are
no,
some things that, yeah. And then we
yeah,
also talk about something, and now that we're talking about this part, we were talking about when you have a household that speaks more than one language, you combine these languages in your conversations, which is
yeah,
very fun. And it helps the kids with creativity.
yeah. Yeah, and then obviously my girls have boyfriends and they're quite often here as well. They're both Spanish, they're from here. But sometimes I'm in another room, I hear my one daughter speaking to her boyfriend and they're talking about something in Spanish, and I obviously hear what they're saying and I want to contribute to the conversation. So I go in and I say something, and sometimes I just say it in English without thinking. So I say something in English, and obviously my daughter understands perfectly, but even the boyfriend now actually understands. So then he's like, oh, but then he answers in Spanish. So we can have a conversation over the three languages sometimes without thinking which language should we use now. It's just whatever feels
Yes.
right for that person in that moment,
Yes, yes. And then it doesn't, it comes natural. And sometimes I don't know, sometimes with my daughter, we're speaking and there are some like slangs
Mm.
that like that only fit in Spanish
Yeah,
or that only fit in English. And then if we try to translate them, they
yeah,
sound very funny.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we say it. My husband is American and he doesn't know Spanish, but he has started to learn these slangs.
Mm.
And I cannot think one that does not have a course word on it right now.
I have a couple that still lives in our conversations that
Okay.
always is in Spanish, and I think it will always stay in Spanish because the English version of the word is much longer and more complicated.
Yes.
So, for example, if the girls are going to go out in the village, and I say, "Where are you going?" They just say, "We're going to the cancha," which is the play. It's the football ground, really.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's where they hang out. So, and it's just easier to say cancha because they know I know where that is and what it is, instead of saying football ground because it sounds a bit odd. Are they going to play football? No, they're not. And the other one we also say in Spanish always is coleta. Where have you seen the coleta? The hair scrunchie to put up your hair with. Again,
Yes.
it doesn't have a proper word in English, I don't think, which is as
It-
easy as coleta.
No, the scrunchy, but if it is not a scrunchy, yeah, we
Well,
say
then exactly, it
colita.
is not as
Yeah.
exactly. A coleta can be all sorts.
Yes, yes, we say colita. Where is my colita?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There is a slight difference between your Spanish and my Spanish because
Yes.
mine is built on the Spain Spanish, as in mainland Spain, but then it's Canarian, so it's slightly different there as well. I think you call, flip flops. We use that a lot. We live in a warm climate. I think you call it chanclas. Do you call it chanclas? Yeah, yeah. And here we call it cholas, so slightly different.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. And the chancla in Latin culture can also be a weapon.
Ah, okay. I see,
So
I see.
there are also things like jokes and things that when we are talking, we realize we're speaking in two languages. And sometimes when we're with my daughter's friends, they're like, wait, you just switch on us. And we don't realize we're doing it.
No, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that happens to me sometimes if I'm out, especially if you're with a group of people and they are all different nationalities. So maybe there's a couple of Swedish, there's some English, and you turn around to one person to say something, and you say it, and they look a bit like, and I usually go, "Did I speak Swedish to you?" And they're like, "I think so. I didn't understand a word."
Yes, like what you say. Yes. So in we talk about our identity. Our identity is mostly for the language that you're speaking the most at the moment, or in your present life. But the language also identify us as who we are, and what we are and where we're going. When you know more than one language, you become more open-minded
Absolutely.
of the world around you. So you as a mom and with a family that speak different languages and have been in different countries, you can also speak on these, on how you see the difference between your kids being more open-minded than others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, for example, when they were younger, we spend a lot of time on the beach because it's free, it doesn't cost any money. We have the climate for it. And they would always find some other kids on the beach to play with. And, if they already saw that they were English, the kids, so they spoke English automatically, but they would still ask the other children, so how many languages do you speak? Or what languages do you speak? And if it was an English child, then he would go, I don't only speak English, because that's all they speak normally. But for my children, it was like, they just assumed that everybody spoke more than one language. That would be the norm for them. And then a bit later, when we also played a lot with other Scandinavian families, like I told you, that Danish, Norwegian, for example, we have a very similar language. But as an adult, I can understand Danish or Norwegian. So the adults can speak their own language, but we still understand each other. But we realized that didn't apply to the children, because they had not been exposed to Danish or Norwegian enough to be able to translate the little differences that there are. Okay. So they would go into a group. There might have been a child with a Swedish and English father, Swedish mom, English father, another child with a Norwegian mom and a Spanish dad, another child with Danish mom and English father, all sorts of combinations. And if there were like 4 or 5 of them, we used to observe them and see very, very quickly they would find out which one was the easiest language for everybody to use. It took them like a couple of minutes, then they're like, okay, that one speaks that one speaks that one, that one's not so good at that one. And they would find the common language that would be easiest for everybody.
And without hesitation, without judging.
Without anybody having to tell them to do it. They just did it because they wanted to play. And they obviously had to work out who speaks what in this group. So we need to work out which one is it going to be. Is it going to be English or Spanish? Which works best?
And I love this conversation. I love it because it opens the mind to many people to understand that children are our true teachers. And if we go back there, we don't have to divide as much. We are meant to be together, and children find a way, like in that little play, like that situation that you are describing right now. They all knew they were different, but they all wanted to play together and found the similarities in lieu of marking the differences.
Yeah, because they would look all different, because some of them had Spanish influence genetically, so they were obviously dark-haired and looked more like they come from here, whereas my children are super blonde and look super Swedish. So, but they didn't, that wasn't the thing that triggered them to decide which language. It was always about what can you speak and how are we going to do this. If somebody didn't speak so good Spanish, then maybe English is better, or vice versa.
Yes, and then also there is another beautiful thing when a family has been together and traveled together and gone through different cultures. It's a more very welcoming family.
Yes.
You see that the kids are always very inclusive and and others belong.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to talk more about this because you probably have better examples than I do on these. So how did you see that? How are your, what is the place that your kids play among their friends?
Yeah. My oldest daughter didn't have really that many friends. She was quite a loner, and that's just how she is personality wise. But she has, now that she's older, she's working a lot, and she herself, I think, has discovered that the fact that she can communicate with a lot of people because she has all the different languages, it makes it so much easier to be a good give good customer service, if whether you're a waitress or if you work in a shop or if you work in a bodega like she does now. But then she traveled to Sweden because she wanted to explore the country a little bit. So she was in Stockholm. She's never been to Stockholm. She doesn't know anything, but she looks very Swedish. And she was trying with her, phone to find her way to this park that was famous, and she wanted to go there. So she was standing on this bridge, and then she could hear this family standing next to her, Spanish family, not knowing where to go. And she automatically just went up to them and said, "Listen, are you going to that park? I am as well. I don't know where it is, but together we can help each other because I know a bit of Swedish," she says. And they were so grateful. She was their little private guide in a place where she had never been herself. So, and then they went to this cafe, and they obviously bought her an ice cream or whatever it was.
That is amazing. You see, no inhibitions and more welcoming, more belonging, saying, being able to say, oh, let's get together, more
Yeah.
togetherness. So
Yeah.
I believe that if we all explore different cultures in different languages, we're going to be able to understand each other better and
Yeah.
to be together more.
Yeah. It takes away the us and them feeling, doesn't it? When because I can't say them to anybody because I'm as much them because I'm part of their culture, I'm part of their language and all of that. So it's just only frustrating when I go to a country when I don't understand the language. I get really frustrated.
Exactly. What you're saying is so true. So it takes away this they, them, and
Yeah.
makes it more us, we, ours. And it's beautiful because that is the whole purpose of being in this world, to be together and connect and help each other.
Yeah.
So it is very important for the children development to learn different languages because it helps them with the creativity. It allows them to identify better themselves and also helps them in their social life.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, there is research on this about the brain and multilingualism, about how much more flexible the brain is. And it also said to help for Alzheimer's and things like that as well, because it's a huge exercise for the brain to constantly be jumping from language to language. And some people say, oh yeah, but you're mixing languages, you don't know any of your languages good enough now because you're mixing. And that's not true. It's the brain's way of taking a shortcut. If one word comes in first, then you use that, because if it still makes sense in when you're speaking, then it doesn't matter. And it doesn't mean I've lost the other one. It's just that it took a little bit longer to find that one.
Exactly. I have been 26 years here in US speaking English. And sometimes when I am going to say words that you don't use every day in Spanish, I go, how do you say that in Spanish? And I remember the word in English, and I have to tell people, how do you say so-and-so word, say it in English, in Spanish? And it's not because I don't know it, it's because probably my brain hasn't used it for a while.
Exactly. I did a reel on Instagram just a couple of weeks ago, which, there's a trend at the moment on saying I am so and so, of course I did.
Yes.
So I did one on multilingual. I'm multilingual, of course I, and then I had a few different examples
Awesome.
on
I
that.
have to check it out.
You have to go and look at that one, yeah.
Yes. And it's off. I would like to know, how do you, I want to give you the opportunity to know, to tell our audience, how do you help people and how they
Yeah.
can find you?
Right. My tagline is because your time matters, because that it matters so much to me, your time. That's why I know how, if when you're a small business owner, especially if you're, I must say it mostly applies to women because they usually have to run their family as well at the same time, but they might be a business owner. It is so hard to do everything yourself. And I just keep saying, you don't have to do everything yourself. There are ways of getting help. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to get somebody full on board for loads of hours. There are many ways to work together with a virtual assistant like myself, for example, or just getting the help of getting yourself organized enough to know where to streamline or where to find other ways of automating your business. And that's where I come in. And obviously having the 3 languages means I can also work with businesses who work over different countries. I have a lot of English speaking solopreneurs who live in Spain, for example, and obviously they need both languages for paperwork, etc. So that's the benefit of that as well. And I do also actually have a degree in psychology, so I am a people person. I understand how people work, and sometimes I can be a little bit of your business mum. I can be the one who nags you a little bit and say, have you actually done that now? And I know that's quite appreciated as well amongst my clients. So
I love it. So you are a true caring person for your
yeah,
clients.
I care for my clients' business as much as they care for their business themselves. So getting somebody like me on board, it doesn't have to be me. There are many virtual assistants who do say similar things to me. But I will say, and this is another thing that I'm starting up now, is I also help businesses to outsource. And as I said, not necessarily to me, but just getting prepared to outsourcing and finding the right match, because that's important. You need to find somebody. If you're going to have somebody inside your business helping you, and you've got to feel like you trust that person, that you can communicate with that person, that's super important. So you do really need to feel that you two can work together, because it will make your life so much easier.
I love that. I love the way you take care of your clients and how you describe it. And how our audience could find you.
Well, I am in all those social media platforms like Instagram. I think I'm called LSVA, that because that's what my company is called. And LSVA actually stands for Language Service Virtual Assistant, and it's my initials. And I'm on LinkedIn as Louise Sverud. My surname is unique. So if you ever find anybody with that surname, they belong to me in some kind of way. And I'm on Facebook, and I have a website. So there are plenty of ways of how to get in touch with me if anybody would need some help with anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I will put all the links on the notes so that people can find you and people can contact you if they
even if they just have a question, even if they don't understand how this whole outsourcing doodah works, then feel free to just contact me. We can put my email there as well.
And you also help with translation, right?
I also do translations, yeah, but to Swedish. So if you have anything Spanish or English, go into Swedish.
Amazing.
And I teach Swedish to Spanish speakers. That's what I love the most. I have been teaching Swedish to other nationalities, but I just love teaching Spanish speakers because I can speak Spanish as well. It makes it a lot more interactive, and I can use examples of Spanish words where the pronunciation is similar and things like that. It just makes it a lot easier.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I will take that. I will note that.
And yeah, you'll be surprised to hear how many Spanish speakers actually want to learn Swedish. It's quite an attractive country for people coming from Spain when it comes to moving to different countries, and there's a high demand of personnel in healthcare, for example, like nursing and things like that. So
I think my name is Swedish.
Oh, really?
Maritza.
Maritza. Maritza, it sounds a little bit like it could be, or a mix of
I
a
think
Swedish name.
there is a river with my.
I need to look into that. Sweden is a big country. I haven't been to all of it, so I need to look into that.
I think it is. It might be spelled a little different.
Yeah.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's exactly like I.
Okay.
And we will touch base on that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get back to that one.
Yes. So we talk about so many things today. Let's to summarize our call, our episode. We talk about the importance of language and cultural differences. The cultural differences, living in different cultures opens up your mind, allows you creativity, because even though if you're an adult and you learn other languages, your brain starts to create more. And if we introduce our children to different languages and different cultures at that early age, they will become immediately more inclusive and helping others belong to different groups. And they will feel like they belong to the world.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. Louise, would you like to leave our audience with last thought?
Well, there are two things that are super important for me, and that is books, reading, and languages. And I think both of those things are what opens doors, opens your mind into new worlds, new cultures. Because even if you read a book in English and it's written in another language originally, it usually tells you something about that culture from the original language. So read books and learn languages.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Louise. And to you, our audience, remember, we came to this world to be loved, to love each other, and to bring love to everyone. Thank you so much. And see
Thank
you
you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having you.
I love it. I love it. I love this conversation. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.